What if I told you that the people who truly control the world don't sit in parliaments, they don't campaign for votes, and they don't march in armies? They sit quietly behind glass towers, controlling invisible levers, and with a single keystroke, they can create or erase trillions of dollars. This isn't a story about a secret society or a sci-fi movie. It's about something very real and hiding in plain sight. A hidden empire that transcends nations, one that doesn't just influence governments, it owns them. An empire built not on land or weapons, but on money itself. Today, we uncover the hidden empire controlling the world's money supply. And the shocking truth is, it's been running the global economy like a puppet show for over a century. Beat drop. Transition to title screen. Title card, the hidden empire controlling the world's money supply. To understand how this empire was built, we have to travel back to the dawn of the 20th century. The world was industrializing at an unimaginable speed. Steel, oil, and electricity had given birth to a new class of powerful men, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Rothschilds. But as industries expanded, something strange began to happen. Governments started depending more and more on private financiers to keep their economies stable. And when financial chaos struck, as it did during the Panic of 1907, the solution wasn't found in the hands of elected leaders, it was found in a small group of bankers. One of them was J.P. Morgan. During the panic, Morgan stepped in to save the American financial system using his own money. He organized a private bailout, rescuing banks, railroads, and corporations from total collapse. The government watched powerless. And in that moment, a dangerous idea was born. What if the world's money could be controlled centrally, not by governments, but by a few trusted experts in banking and finance? Once America created its Federal Reserve, other nations followed. By the end of the 20th century, almost every developed nation had a central bank, all connected through a web of cooperation and influence. At first, it seemed to work. Economic growth soared. Wars were funded. Modern industries thrived. But behind the scenes, something deeply unnatural was happening. Central banks discovered they could create money out of nothing through a process called fractional reserve banking. Here's how it works. When you deposit $1,000 into your bank, the bank doesn't keep it in a vault. It lends out about $900 to someone else, who deposits it again. That $900 becomes another $810 loan, and the cycle repeats. From a single $1,000 deposit, the system magically creates nearly $10,000 of money. It's not backed by gold, silver, or production-only debt. Every dollar is born as a promise to repay, with interest. This meant that to keep the system alive, nations must keep borrowing. Debt wasn't a side effect anymore. It became the fuel. And the more they borrowed, the richer the empire grew. By the mid-20th century, the illusion began to crack. World War II had drained economies. Nations were buried in debt, and yet they printed even more money. To stabilize things, the world gathered at Bretton Woods in 1944. There, 44 nations agreed to link their currencies to the US dollar, and the dollar, in turn, was backed by gold. For a time, it worked. The dollar became the global reserve currency. The United States and its Federal Reserve effectively gained control of global trade. But by the 1960s, America itself started spending beyond limits, funding wars in Vietnam, social programs, and expansionist projects. Foreign nations noticed that the U.S. was printing more dollars than it had gold to back. So they began demanding gold in exchange for their paper dollars. And that's when President Richard Nixon made a move that changed money forever. On August 15, 1971, Nixon appeared on national television and announced that the U.S. would no longer exchange dollars for gold. The link between paper money and real value was broken. Overnight, the global financial system became pure fiat, money by government decree. And now, there was no limit. The empire could print infinity. Once gold was removed from the equation, debt exploded. Governments realized they could promise anything, fund anything, and print to cover the rest. The result: A global addiction. From 1971 to today, total global debt has skyrocketed from around $5 trillion to over $300 trillion. That's not progress. That's dependency. Every boom in housing, in tech, in stock markets was fueled by cheap money. And every crash that followed was just a correction back to reality. But here's the genius of the system. Each crisis made the empire even stronger. When banks failed, governments bailed them out with money created by the same central banks that caused the problem. When economies stalled, central banks lowered interest rates, making borrowing even easier. Each solution only tightened the web. And behind it all stood a network of unelected technocrats, the Bank for International Settlements based in Basel, Switzerland, quietly coordinating the policies of over 60 central banks worldwide. This isn't a theory. It's their stated purpose to foster monetary and financial stability. But stability for whom? Because for most people, prices rise, savings fall, and inequality grows. Yet for the elite institutions, the same ones closest to the money printer, profits soar. It's not stability. It's control. Today, the empire no longer needs paper. Money has gone digital. Central banks are developing CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, programmable money that can track, control, and even expire. It's the next evolution of control. Think about it. If every transaction, every paycheck, every donation can be monitored or blocked, who really owns your money? Add to that the invisible power of quantitative easing, where trillions are created at the push of a button, and you begin to see the pattern. Every time the world collapses, a select few rise even higher. During the 2008 crisis, the Federal Reserve created over $16 trillion in emergency loans, most of which went to the very banks that caused the collapse. And during the 2020 pandemic, global central banks printed nearly $10 trillion in less than a year. The empire didn't just survive the crisis, it profited from it. Meanwhile, inflation soared. Housing became unaffordable. And the average citizen, the worker, the saver, carried the invisible cost of keeping the illusion alive. If history has taught us anything, it's that debt-based systems don't die quickly. They decay slowly. Every empire, Rome, Spain, Britain, fell not by invasion, but by debt and currency manipulation. They diluted their coins, debased their money, and destroyed trust. And every time a new system rose with the same promise of stability. We're watching that same movie again. Only now, the stage is global. Our currencies are no longer national, they're networked. Our debts are no longer local, they're interconnected. And when one domino falls, the entire web shakes. Today, over 90% of all money in existence doesn't physically exist, it's just digits on screens, backed by loans, interest, and promises. If every debt were paid off tomorrow, the global money supply would collapse instantly. That's not a financial system. That's a trap. The empire is now reaching its breaking point. Governments are drowning in debt, inflation is eroding faith, and people are starting to ask questions. Gold is rising. Cryptocurrencies are emerging as digital escape routes. And alternative financial systems, from BRICS alliances to gold-backed trade settlements, are challenging the old order. But here's the paradox, even as new systems rise, they still rely on the same principles: trust, credit, and control. The empire doesn't always die. It mutates. And while people debate over currencies, interest rates, or inflation, the same invisible network of banks, financiers, and policymakers continues to steer the course. Because as long as money is created through debt, control will remain in the hands of those who issue it. So, what can we learn from all this? Takeaway number 1. Money is not value. It's a claim on value. Whoever creates it controls reality itself. Takeaway number 2. Every financial rescue in history was never about saving the people. It was about preserving the system. Takeaway number 3. The illusion of stability is the most powerful form of control. The moment we stop questioning it, we surrender to it. We like to believe that nations compete, that democracy keeps power in check. But beneath every ideology, every border, and every flag lies the same financial foundation. A foundation built by those who discovered the ultimate secret. You don't need to rule people directly when you control the money they depend on. If this story opened your eyes, don't let it end here. Share this video and question what you've been taught about money, debt, and control, because awareness is the first step out of illusion. This is not financial advice, it's financial truth. And truth, once seen, can never be unseen. Subscribe for more untold financial stories.